Hey, what up, YouTube? Still in recovery mode a bit, but a lot better compared to when I made the last video. Now that I look back on it, I'm not even sure how I made that video because I was actually pretty sick. But yeah. Quick update video, rumor video, pertaining to finally, I guess you could say, a media deal for the Pacific Athletic Conference. So primarily, the rumor is, right, it's not ESPN, it's not CBS, it's Fox. So apparently Fox Sports, who I actually believe, I believe Fox is currently one of the providers, essentially. They currently play Mountain West games. I guess it makes sense because some of those relationships are already there, right? You basically just took half of the Mountain West and moved them to the PAC. It makes sense. There's rumor that Fox Sports potentially could be offering the PAC, this new PAC, a media rights deal, and that number is between 8 to 10 million. And what I mean by 8 to 10 million, we're talking about 8 to 10 million per school per year. Now, the other thing is, right, is that 8 to 10 million based on the current number of schools? Is that 8 to 10 million based on a figure if they went and added more schools, right? Those are the specifics nobody knows. And like I said, a lot of this is still kind of rumor mill type of stuff. But let's say that this actually does go through. Let's say it ends up being Fox Sports essentially gets like exclusive rights to the PAC, right? ESPN gets no games. CBS gets no games. TNT isn't airing any of their games, right? It's purely just Fox Sports is going to be the sole provider for the new PAC, football, basketball, I guess technically baseball too, just Fox Sports. And let's say it's that 10 million number. What that means for the Mountain West and the other thing I'm hearing is there's a decent chance that the Mountain West would still somewhat just probably be CBS and potentially TNT, which I would say that's somewhat of a win for the Mountain West. Is that technically less money in a sense? It's interesting because I can't even say that means less money. It's interesting in the sense that, right, we have TNT moving into college sports, specifically college football, which is something that I'm not sure that I've ever seen before from TNT. But they're going that route with things. So there's opportunity there. Originally, it was Fox. I believe it was Fox and CBS. Those were the two main collaborators when it came to Mountain West media. It's almost as if you're just kind of getting rid of one partner, and now it'll be CBS and TNT. And, I guess they can work out whatever it is, And then again, also that TNT deal may be something a bit different in general itself, because I want to say TNT came after CBS and Fox. So they may have their own totally different contract in general. And then maybe CBS would have to work around that, or maybe they all just come down and come to sit up at the table and they work things out. But yeah, it seems like Fox is like, we're willing to just go in on the PAC. Like I said, what that means, if the PAC gets a $10 million payout, they now beat the Mountain West. They beat the MAC, Conference USA, Sun Belt, and more importantly, They beat the AAC. Even with the $8 million payout, they are beating the AAC. The AAC's payout per team, I want to say the number is in between 5 to 7 million. 5 to 7, somewhere in between there. We're talking about, like I said, this is rumor. We're talking about the PAC potentially having a number between 8 to 10. And like I said, we don't know if that's currently based on the exact number of schools they have at the current moment. We don't know if that number is based on, like, okay, you know, let's say talks went down like this, like, okay, we still want to add a few more teams. And of course, by us adding a few more teams, a few more schools, that benefits you all, you know. So I couldn't see Fox being like, nah, we just want who you currently have. I'm pretty sure Fox is like, go get Memphis, go get Tulane, go get this school, go get that school. We're giving you the money to be able to make it happen. We, at the end of the day, they want viewership. At the end of the day, that conference, just with who they have, is not as exciting. It's not, because it's literally just the Mountain West all over again, and you added 2 PAC schools. That is what that conference is. Basketball-wise, okay, you got Gonzaga. That's your biggest thing right now is Gonzaga. I still think, like I said, I still think they're going to add 1 or 2 more basketball schools. Most likely 1, and it'll most likely be St. Mary's. But I do still think the PAC is going to go after certain schools. And the biggest, like, the scariest thing for the AAC right now, which, still me being an NIU fan, the scariest thing for the AAC right now could be a positive for schools like NIU and Toledo. If that number ends up being 10 million, there is no way that the PAC isn't going to go and poach Memphis, Tulane. Those 2, I feel like, are 2 for sure schools that they're going after. Why those 2? Because essentially you can say that those are the 2 strongest schools in that conference. Tulane and Memphis. Those are your 2 strongest schools when it comes to football. After that, like we've been saying, they potentially maybe go after 1 or 2 Texas schools. And the thing is that, right, the Mountain West opened up a door for the PAC that the PAC may not have necessarily been looking at when it came to Texas State. For the most part, it may have just been UTSA, maybe Rice. You know, maybe UTSA and Tulsa. Maybe Tulsa and Rice, right? Those might have been the options. Once Texas State had whatever communications they had with Texas State, it seemed like things, now all of a sudden Texas State, there's interest now all of a sudden, right? That's how the game goes. So it could be Texas State and Rice. It could be Texas State and UTSA. It could be Texas State and Tulsa. It could be, or like I said, it can still just be, nah, we don't want Texas State. We'll let them stay in the Sun Belt. Rice, UTSA, come on down. If the PAC takes 4 schools, if they take 4 schools from the AAC, right now the PAC for football is sitting at 7 schools. You want more than, like, you clearly want more than 7. So that should tell people automatically the PAC is going after more schools. A conference schedule in the rest of college football, generally, typically, your minimum is 8 conference games, which really means you kind of need 9 football participants. They're currently at 7. Washington State, Oregon State, that's 2. Boise, San Diego, Fresno, Colorado State, Utah State, that's 5. They're only sitting at 7. they're for sure adding 2 more. They're for sure adding 2 more. Memphis, if I'm the PAC, and I feel like they still are, Memphis is their number 1 target. Because Memphis gives you solid football and they give you historically good basketball, right? That's why you go after Memphis. They give you solid football, and historically they give you solid basketball, right? Memphis is a name in the basketball world at the end of the day. Simple as that. That's why you go after those 2. Could they potentially go after UConn? UConn could still be an option. And if you're saying that UConn, we can give you $8 million a year, right? I don't have a calculator in front of me, which sucks. I think I got one somewhere, but I don't have one in front of me, and I don't feel like doing mental math. But if that deal, like I said, as of right now, if that deal is talking about a $10 million payout, I want to go with the higher number, because if you go with the higher number, if you add more schools, it's a little bit easier to work with those numbers if you add more schools. If we're doing a 10 mil payout, matter of fact, I might have a calculator because I see my students do this all the time. Come on. Perfect. Calculator on my watch. There we go. I'm being like the kids. If they got a $10 million payout, 10 mil a year or 10 million a year, I don't know how many years, right? We're just guessing stuff. Let's say they added 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say they added 4 schools from the AAC. They added 4 schools from the AAC. If they add 4 schools from the AAC, that puts their total membership at 12. But that gives you 11 football members. Total memberships at 12, but 11 football. I would think, and here's what I'm wondering, whatever deal they do, if they're talking about 10 mil a year, 10 million a year, they're probably going for a $6 million, or not, a 6-year deal, I mean. Well, that's $60 million. No, I'm doing this math completely wrong. What am I doing? I'm clearly doing this completely wrong. Let's do 10 million. Let's say each school is getting 10 million. 10 million times 12 schools. That's the math I'm doing incorrectly right now. So 10 million times 12. And then let's not forget Gonzaga is basketball only. So there's the whole thing with that where it's like, you know, they may not even get the full payout, da-da-da-da-da. And that's what makes the numbers a little bit different, because Gonzaga is not, because Gonzaga doesn't have a football team, it changes their number a bit. Now, is Gonzaga going to be getting more than they ever got before? Hands down. Like, Gonzaga is going to be getting more of a payout from the conference than they've ever gotten in their lives. So, right, yeah, Gonzaga may not be getting 10 mil, but Gonzaga will be getting a nice chunk. Let's take this number, divide that by, like I said, I hate using this. Like, I don't even know how my students use this. They use their watch calculators. I guess it's because I'm working with numbers that are bigger than usual. So it's not even going to give me what I'm looking for. It's going to give me something with an E, and I'm not trying to deal with that right now. But long story short, if they work out a deal, let's say a 6-year deal, and they have, let's say they got 13 teams. Let's say they got 13 teams. Let's say they don't add another basketball school. But let's say they add a school for football only. And I'm not saying NIU. But let's just say they add one more school, football only type of deal. And let's say that balances out some way, somehow. Where it's like, well, we got Gonzaga that's only getting money for this amount. You'll get the other whatever payoff that is since you're football only. And they call it even like that. You would have 13 members. 2 of those members kind of combine and financially almost like they're one member, if that makes sense. But you would have 12 for football, but then you'd also still have 12 for basketball. And you win. Like, they just basically win the game. Yeah, it kind of sucks for the AAC, the way this is shaping up. Because the AAC is not going to be able to fight that. Like, it would take the AAC finding some way, somehow, to cut a new deal with ESPN. And it's like, they just struck that deal with ESPN. ESPN has absolutely no reason to come back to the table and give them more money. Absolutely no reason. Absolutely no reason. So most likely, like I said, you're about to see the AAC potentially with an $8 to $10 million payout. Now that they have that number and it's pretty much set in stone, if you're a school like Memphis, Tulane, that right, unless you see the power conferences step in, which I don't see happening because they've already made the moves they made, the only power conference that could potentially step in is the ACC. The ACC is the only conference where you could add a Tulane, you could add a Memphis, and it kind of works. It kind of works. You already in that weird situation because you got SMU, Cal, and Stanford. If you at least add Tulane, okay, now you got somebody that is right there, right next to SMU. SMU and Tulane both have played each other in the the AAC, so they're familiar with each other. Memphis, Tennessee. If anything, adding those 2 schools to the ACC benefits SMU a little bit because, right, like there's some familiarity from the AAC. It could work, right? The ACC wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt the ACC adding 2 more schools. It wouldn't hurt them adding 2 more schools, right? In comparison to the Big 12 that literally, brought in 4 schools at the last minute, right? They brought in 4 schools. The ACC brought in 2, right? SMU was already going to join the ACC, I believe. But when they brought in Stanford and Cal, right, I feel like it made things a little weird. They might as well, right? So the only thing standing in the PAC's way is the ACC when you really think about it. But I don't know if the ACC has absolutely any reason whatsoever to go and add Memphis and Tulane. I'm not saying it wouldn't be beneficial. I think they're good fits. I think they work. But they have absolutely no reason to add those 2 schools. The only reason would be was like, well, if we had to choose from the best of who's available, their thought process is this. They're either looking at poaching from the Big 12 or you poach from the AAC. Big 12, AAC. But which conference has a tougher buyout? The Big 12. So you're less likely to have a school leave the Big 12 than to leave the AAC. You can leave the Big 12, but you're going to have to pay, pretty sure, a nice chunk of money in exit fees. Leaving the AAC, going to a power conference, for all we know, there may be something contractually written in there that already states, we will not penalize you if a power conference picks you up, right? We won't penalize you. We'll penalize you if you leave us and go to the PAC. Then we'll penalize you, but we won't penalize you right? If the ACC comes in and they're like, we want you. That's how I look at it. But yeah, so like I said, technically this whole thing with Fox Sports, and even that $8 to $10 million number, it's all a rumor technically, but looking at how everything has gone, a lot of these things have been rumors that have come out to basically be, nah, this is pretty much the truth. These are the facts of the matter. But they start as a rumor, right? It's a rumor because, well, anything you can essentially consider a rumor until you hear somebody officially say it, you know? So, yeah, right. That $8 to $10 million number, I've been saying that. I've been saying from the get-go, the PAC has a higher likelihood of getting a solid payout. The PAC will get a payout better than the AAC. These were the facts. Based on the teams they picked up and the teams that were there, right? Oregon State and Washington State, no matter if you want to view them, oh, well, those were the two weakest PAC schools, those were still two power conference schools, right? Somebody could turn around and be like, no, Arizona and Arizona State were the weakest PAC schools, yada, yada, yada. Colorado was the weakest PAC school, yada, 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 right? Somebody could say Cal was one of the weakest PAC schools. If they wanted to, if they really wanted to, at the end of the day, those were power conference schools, right? They got the money, they got the alumni base, they got the, right, they already have their stadiums, they have all of those things. Will they survive without power conference payouts? Essentially, yeah, they will. They'll survive. They'll probably do just fine. And the thing is, the better that conference ends up doing, that's when you're going to see more money. But if they want to end up seeing the biggest possible payout, they have to add the best schools available. This isn't me talking about, oh, well, they're going to add NIU, they're going to add Toledo, they're going to, right? I already have that map. That's like, well, if they wanted to create a PAC East, right? You add NIU, you add Toledo, you add Memphis, you add Tulane, you add UTSA, and let's say USF, or, you know, right? You now have 6 schools over there. You got 6 schools. No, matter of fact, in this scenario, you'd actually have like 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. So you'd actually have more than that. You'd actually have a whole nother school thrown in that mix. Right? So now you got 7 in the East, 7 in the West. You got a 14-team football conference. You still got Gonzaga for basketball. Maybe you still bring in St. Mary's. And then there you go. Right? And then when you go to cut your next media rights deal, you'll that number has to go up. The number's going to go up. No way it doesn't go up. Because you basically just took the best of the rest. Unless one of these MAC schools, Sunbelt schools, Conference USA schools, or another AAC school out of the blue becomes a super powerhouse dominant program, what we're looking at is kind of it. The schools that you hear mentioned are kind of the best that are available, right? This would be a way more fun scenario if NIU had a better record, right? If NIU were 7-1 right now, 8-0. If NIU were 8-0 right now, I want to say technically, because as of today, I want to say Boise State is ranked 12th. So unless those rankings come out and they move Boise State ahead of us, we would have been the 12th ranked team. We would have been the college football playoff upset group of 5, group of 6 team right now if we would have been undefeated, right? We were ranked. That means we'd also beat NC State. That means we'd also basically beat every other school we played. We would have at least been, just purely based on how the numbers are going, we would have been 12th. And it sucks because we've now lost all these games that we should have won. Like, they should have been dominant wins, right? And because we're losing games, we're not as dominant as we should be. Because of that, it makes it even more difficult to have this conversation about somebody wanting NIU for, their conference realignment or yada, 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 right? If we're 8-0, 7-1, shoot, maybe even 6-2, it's easier for the fan base to be like, okay, yeah, right, we're a decent team, The 2 losses we had were tough losses. They were close. They were nail biters. But other than that, we've been dominant the whole year. That's not the conversation we can have when it comes to NIU football right now. But still, that does not mean NIU is not on the bubble. We're still on the bubble. Because at the end of the day, yes, wins and losses matter, but people are still going to let's look at the last 10, 20, 30 years. Let's look at what media market you're in. Let's look at performance. Even if we look at your season, I'm like, still at the end of the day, NIU beat Notre Dame. That's one thing you can never take away from them. NIU beat a ranked Notre Dame. You can never take that away from them. You get what I'm saying? So people are going to look at those things. They're going to be like, yes, NIU's losing these games, but it's like, okay, defensively, they're one of the best. They're solid defensively. Even though the last game, we just watched them shit the bed. And it's just like, yo, come on. It's like, even then, NIU hasn't been, like, destroyed in any of these games. Like, that's the craziest part to me. NIU is yet to be straight up blown out. Like, we're yet to be blown out. We're like the definition of we keep consistently playing down to our competition. We're yet to be straight blown out. So that's somewhat of a positive sign. It at least goes to show the defense is still solid enough that even in the games where the defense isn't playing up to that, top 20, whatever ranking nationally, even then the defense, they're not just folding and giving up 50-something points, 40-something points. They're not. What I would love from our defense is turnovers, because we're getting, like, no turnovers. Like, it just ain't happening. Right? We're losing that battle for sure. And like I said, our offense is our offense. I don't feel like talking about that anymore. But even with our record right now, NIU is still an option for conference, to be in another conference at the end of all of this. Whether that be the AAC, that could be the PAC. If the PAC is paying out $10 million a year, NIU can afford to be a full member. Matter of fact, any school that the PAC invites can be a full member if the payout is $10 million. You're chartering 4 away flights, right? Because you're going to have 4 home games for the conference. So you're going to have 4 home, 4 away. Your non-con games, yeah, you got to figure that out too. So realistically, if you want to sit there and be like, well, we're figuring out flights or we're chartering 6 flights. Chartering 6 flights, I did the math on this not that long back. Chartering 6 flights for a college football team, I want to say that number, I don't even think it hit $500,000. I think it was less than $500,000. It wasn't even a whole million. It was less than, if I remember correctly, the number I pulled up was less than $500,000. to fly a college football team from here to here, right? If we had the numbers on however much it may have cost the flight for NIU when they went to the Orange Bowl, because that was a chartered flight. You got to remember that. That was a chartered flight. Matter of fact, that plane picked the team up in DeKalb. It wasn't even like this. It wasn't like they had to go to O'Hare or Midway. We had just enough runway to actually have that flight take off from DeKalb, which is super dope when you think about it. That's amazing. We got just enough to make it work. So that's huge. So that means you can literally charter those flights. Yes, don't get the highest top tier plane. You go, and I'm not saying to get the lowest, maybe aim for the middle. You aim for the middle and charter them damn flights. 6 flights away. Or maybe you don't even do that. Here's NIU. Let's schedule Ball State for the next 25 years, home and away. That's going to be one of our non-con games. So guess what? Now you don't even have to worry about that one. Okay, let's schedule, we still got to come up with 3 other games. But if you for sure work out that deal with Ball State, there you go. So you now have that continuing, right? Maybe you set up something with Miami, Ohio, right? Because that is also a rivalry game with actual trophy. Like, to me, that makes sense. If we leave the MAC, some schools, right, when they get so big, right, it may seem beneath them to play those rivalry games against schools that aren't in a power conference or equivalent. We would still be a group of 6, I guess, a group of 6 school. I would think it'd be perfectly fine, normal, and okay, and it would actually benefit NIU in that sense, travel-wise, to do home and aways against Ball State and Miami, Ohio. Let those rivalries live on. Here's our last taste of action. Every year you get 2 tastes of action out of us, and then we go into conference play. Long story short, what I'm saying is, if NIU is getting $10 million from the PAC every year, I can promise you they would be able to afford the travel for football. They'd be able to afford the travel for basketball. They'd be able to. The only area starts to get kind of funky. It's like, okay, now we got to look into, women's softball. Like, we still have to, we got to cover football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball. I mean, yeah, that's where it gets kind of tricky. But then you also kind of got to start to look at it a little bit differently. Do you consider, or what is the PAC considering full membership? I'm assuming they consider full membership. So we're talking about, okay, you have gymnastics. That's a part of it. You got this. That's a part of it. You got this. That's a part of it. Yeah, they would have to figure out travel. Essentially, it seems like, but like I said, if you're getting $10 million, if you're getting $10 million, more than NIU has ever seen, travel, you could allocate, I would think, for all our sports, rough estimate, we should be able to cover travel for all sports. Rough estimate, $2 million. Rough estimate, maybe even 3. Even if that's the case, if it's $2 million, okay, so we still got another $8 million. Oh, it's 3 million for travel. Oh, we still got another 7 million. So that's what I mean by NIU will have enough money in the like there would be no reason we can't afford that travel. It wouldn't make sense. We could afford the travel at that point. If the payout is that much, we can afford it. Even if the payout was 8 million. And if travel is 2 million, we're doing basic math now, right? If we got a payout of 8 million, travel is 2 million, NIU has 6 million left. That's still way more than we've ever gotten. Oh, travel's 3 million a year. We got 5 million left. That's still way more than NIU's ever gotten. So any one of those numbers, it works. It works. That's the reason why when I said if things begin to snowball, dominoes begin to fall, like I said, rumor, the PAC has a deal between 8 to 10 million, then that means they're going to start doing what I said they're going to do. Schools in the AAC are now about, like, spots are about to open up. Spots are going to open up. Spots are going to open up. And the sad part is, like I said, even if it ends up being Memphis and Tulane go to the ACC and not to the PAC, that's still 2 schools that the AAC just lost. The PAC are still most likely going to be looking for schools. If the ACC takes Memphis and Tulane, that's, let's be honest, that benefits NIU even more. Because now the PAC, they just took a hit a little bit. Because Memphis and Tulane are probably at the tippy top of their list. And if the ACC is like, nah, we'll take those up off y'all. They take those 2 chess pieces. Now, the PAC has to rethink some things. They got to look at things a little bit differently. They're like, okay, we still want to expand. We still need football teams. Where are we going? What gives us the best situation? Right? We know, right? We want a footprint in Texas. Like, they're going to go after some Texas schools. What would be crazy, now that I think about it, if Memphis and Tulsa went to the ACC, the PAC easily could sit there and be like, you know what, we'll just go after a bunch of Texas schools. I mean, not, what did I say, Tulane. If Tulane and Memphis went to the ACC, the PAC could turn around and be like, North Texas, Rice, UTSA, and Tulsa, we're extending you an invite to the PAC. Like, that would be so petty. That would be the pettiest thing maybe ever. Because I do not envision North Texas, Tulsa, UTSA, or Rice turning that down. You tell those 4 schools, we will now pay you all $8 million a year, $9 million a year, $10 million a year, and you're going to come play on this side of the country instead of that side of the country. They're going to take it. They're taking that deal. They're taking that deal. Especially if you're like North Texas or if you're Tulsa, because I don't think I've heard those 2 mentioned at all, really. You've really been hearing like UTSA. I've been the one that's kind of been throwing Rice out there because at the end of the day, I do think you need a school that is high up on those, you know, very, very highly ranked academically. That's where Rice comes in. But I do want to say UTSA for the most part has kind of been consistently mentioned. North Texas is the one that not really. Rice, you get the academics and you get Houston as well. So it kind of works. Yeah. But that would be crazy. If they were like, well, you know what? Well, we lost that. Rice, North Texas, UTSA, Tulsa. And then they could still be petty enough. They can be like Texas State. How about it? That would mean the exit fee would cost for Texas State to leave the Sun Belt will be canceled out in 1 year. Because they would just get that money right back. And then they would then continue to now get more money than they've ever had. You now have Pacific time zone. You got Pacific, Mountain, Central. The only thing they don't have, they wouldn't have an Eastern time zone representative, which I think they do want at the end of the day. That leads us back to NIU and Toledo. Like I said, if you got 7 schools right now for football, you got 7 for football. It all depends on where you want to stop. It depends on where you want to stop. I just gave you 4. Let's say, like I said, Memphis and Tulane go to the ACC. Let's say in that reality, in that world that happens, Memphis and Tulane go to the ACC. And the PAC is just on a spree. They're just like, we're gonna build a solid conference. We're not gonna stop at 10. We're not stopping at 11. We're going for a nice, solid, healthy number. You got 7 for football. You know, we got 8 total, but 7 for football. I feel like traditionally 12 is typically the number. We know Conference USA, you only need 9 schools to really, truly kind of run a football conference schedule. You know, you only really need 9, right? I think they would want more than that. We got 7. I just gave you North Texas, Rice, UTSA, and Tulsa. So we're at 11. Texas State gives you 12. I'm hurting myself. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Texas State gives you the 12. I mean, they can stop right there. But if they're really just like, we still want a little bit of a footprint, we don't, like, they might not just want West Coast, Mountain. Because it's like you just have West Coast, Mountain, and then Southwest, right? I feel like Texas is considered the Southwest, right? That's the Southwest. Because you'd only have Texas in like an Oklahoma school. I feel like that's when you then kind of sort of go a little north-ish. And you're like, NIU Toledo gives us a little bit of a footprint in the Midwest, right? I'm not going to say again all the things that technically NIU brings to the table. I've said them 1,000 times. But once again, here's the thing. Toledo gets you the Eastern time zone. And whether people want to believe it or not, that Eastern time zone is a thing. It's a sought after thing. Because you want as many eyes. You want as many eyes on your games. If I know I have a 2:30 kickoff at Toledo, we'll at least have one PAC game when everybody else, you get what I'm saying? Right? You'll have that one PAC game. Other than that, the rest of the games are going to be later in the day. Now, you did just load up on a bunch of Central Standard Time, Central Time Zone schools. So that helps you a little bit too, right? Because you add NIU and then literally 5 Texas schools. You got the Central Time Zone on lock, right? You got more than enough you need for the Central Time Zone. Is that Eastern Time Zone? Like I said, you'd only have that one Eastern Time Zone school, right? You got to remember, 7 p.m. kickoff Pacific is 9 p.m. here. 9 p.m. here in Chicagoland, I'm not about to tune in for a full football. Like, the odds are low. They're low. They're real low, actually. Right? I'm winding down. I'm getting ready for the next day. 7 p.m. kickoff. In DeKalb, it's 5 p.m. there. Right? It's 6 p.m. in the mountain. Right? So it works. It works a lot better. It works a lot better. Like I said, this is a little something to hold on to. Right? It's a little excitement because the haters gonna hate. They're gonna be like da 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 da. Even at the end of the day, if NIU ends up going absolutely nowhere, this was all still fun to talk about, for me at least. You know, because I'm like, this might be one of the last times we see any major movement, sculpting, and change that we're seeing like this when it comes to college sports. We may not see anything like this happen again. I don't think we do. I don't think you're going to get the mega group of 5 conference or group of 6, right? You're not going to get the mega power conference and let them be their own separate thing. Like, no, the people who want that shit sucks. It sucks. You're taking away opportunities the moment you do that. You're taking away opportunities. You still have the chance and opportunity where you can see Boise State, maybe, just maybe, Boise State could still end up in the Big 12. Because, yes, is this a benefit to them being in this newly reformed PAC? Yes, but that's still not a power conference. That's still not a power conference. Boise State should have been in a power conference, and sadly, they're not. But they've still been pushing on, being trailblazers for the most part. Right? There's a lot of schools that want to make it to that promised land, right? They want to get into that big conference because once you get in there and you get a cut of that pie, it changes everything. People got to understand that. I just saw somebody post, I think on Twitter, they were like, who did they say? They said Oklahoma. I want to say it was Oklahoma. And I think they were talking about these Mountain West schools, Boise and all of them. They were like, you know, y'all left y'all conference just for money. And now y'all are playing these new opponents and y'all are like getting embarrassed. Right? You left your conference and y'all are losing. Right? It was like, what was the point? Because technically on paper, the only school you could really say that is as dominant as they should be is Boise. Boise's the only one that is technically on its way to a new conference, is still playing the games that it's playing, and is basically steamrolling his way through. You had, I want to say, was it Fresno lost to Hawaii? You got upsets over here, upsets over there, right? All those schools that had left the Mountain West to join the new PAC just to still technically have to play their Mountain West schedule, and then like you're losing these games, right? You know, because y'all thought y'all were better than, right? And I don't even think it was that. I do think it was the money. I think they saw what I saw, the money. And the thing is, people have to understand that money helps you grow. That money is growth. You can't just stay where you are just because, oh, it's a good fit and it's what we're used to. If it's a good fit in what you're used to, but they're only paying you $1 million a year, but you could be making $10 million over there, to me, that's insanity. It's insanity. Why would you stay where you are when you could go over there and make significantly more, right? Especially if you're a school like NIU where there's financial this, financial that. We barely are getting any cut from the school when it comes to athletics. To me, that sounds exactly like we need to go get it ourselves. So I think that's what NIU is going to do. That's what they're going to try to do. And at the end of the day, I hope they make the best move and the right move for them. To me, like I said, best case scenario, we end up in the PAC. I know people are scared. I know that sounds like Big West 2.0. You have to understand the difference. The money is the difference. The Big West was not throwing around $8 million payouts to people. They weren't giving people $10 million payouts. They weren't. And you move to the Big West, there will be enough money to make it happen. We can afford to travel. And I can promise you, if NIU moves to the PAC, I think I said Big West a second ago, if NIU moves to the PAC for all sports, the odds of NIU being the only team from the central time zone that's added to the PAC is extremely low. Like, if NIU ends up getting an invite, there's no way in hell we're the only team. They're going to dip into Texas. They're going to get a couple schools from Texas for sure. If NIU gets an invite, I think Toledo's also getting an invite. So this isn't going to be a situation where it's just us and we have to now come up with all this travel and all. There's going to be a handful of schools that are a bit more reachable, right? That are a bit more in our, geographic part of the world. People just got to understand that. Like, it's not going to be, like when the PAC reached out to Memphis, it wasn't just going to be Memphis. The PAC reached out to UConn, it wasn't just going to be UConn. I think the PAC is legitimately trying to make a PAC East, or they would be really making the real Conference USA. Like that's literally what they would be making. In name, they would be the Pacific Athletic Conference. In reality, they would be Conference USA, because they would then be able to be like, we have schools in every damn time zone across the country. And that would actually be pretty damn dope. And like I said, they live out whatever the current media rights deal they have. Let's say it's just a 6-year deal. That next deal, the number goes up. The number goes up. It's that simple. The number goes up. So, like I said, rumor, new rumor, Fox Sports, potential media deal with the PAC. That number's looking like 8 to 10 million payout for the schools, which, like I said, if that is the truth and that's the case and that's what ends up happening, the next move will be the PAC adding schools from the AAC. That's when this party really gets started. That's when we're going to see what's going to happen. And then by the time the dust settles, we'll see where NIU ends up. Best case scenario or wishful scenario is NIU ends up in the PAC. Odds are low. Odds are low. Most realistic outcome, NIU ends up in the AAC, because that gives you still a pretty decent media rights payout, and they could join as a full member. Third place, Mountain West. And absolute potentially worst outcome is we're still in the MAC. And then a year or two down the line, when the MAC gets their new deal, it's nothing significant. And that's going to suck. Like, if the MAC can't pull off a media rights deal where they're getting at least a $5 million payout for each one of their teams, that just goes to show consistency, solidarity, all of those things mean nothing in the college football landscape. I don't think it will happen, because I don't see any network, any of these broadcasting, networks, right? I don't see them paying that much money to a conference that has 3 schools in Michigan, 5, 6 schools in Ohio, Like, no, they want coverage as far spread out as possible. And that's what people got to understand. I don't think everybody gets it. Like, this is a chess game. These companies, they're paying all these millions of dollars, not because they even necessarily care about the team. I mean, they do care about the schools. The bigger the name, the better the situation, right? But it turns into location. It turns into a multitude of different things, right? Like, people got to understand this stuff. Like, it's not, and the thing is not that difficult to understand. It's not that difficult. If the MAC wasn't just bunched up the way it is, we probably would get a decent payout. Look at the AAC. That is strategic. There's a reason why the AAC runs all up and down the East Coast, but then it comes inland a bit. They're spreading out the conference. You got TVs in Texas. You got TVs in Florida. You got TVs in the Carolinas. You got TVs in New York, Maryland. That is what can get them. That's what gets them a decent deal. The SEC, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Florida, Alabama, right? Georgia, right? Multiple states. The Big Ten. California, Washington, Oregon, New Jersey / New York, right? Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Multitude. They're literally the only time zone that the Big Ten now does not have is the Mountain Time Zone. The Big Ten, the Big Ten. I think Boise, the Big Ten should add Boise. Just go, at this point, if Boise State is in the Mountain Time Zone, frick it. Just go ahead and add them. The only reason Boise State won't get in there is because they do not meet the academic standard of the Big Ten. That's the only reason why. So if people ever wonder why the hell did Rutgers get into the Big Ten, why is Maryland in the Big Ten? Because these schools are considered highly academic research institutes. They meet the academic standard to be in the Big Ten. That's why. So, like I said, people just got to understand the MAC is cooked because we have the smallest footprint of any conference. Most of our schools are in Ohio. And then we got one school in Indiana, one school in Illinois, 3 schools in Michigan. That's the furthest your reach gets, is Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. And then, we got Buffalo. And then, we got UMass. That footprint, that's not a good footprint. It's not a good footprint. Our footprint needs to be spread out more. It has to be spread out more. We need a school that's in Missouri somewhere. We need a school that's in Iowa. We need Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, right? That would be way more benefit. Adding Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee instantly adds more of a benefit to the conference because the footprint is finally spreading. The footprint is actually spreading. We're going to look up, and the Conference USA is going to surpass the MAC. You have to keep in mind, the Conference USA at one point was better than the MAC. And what the hell kept happening to the Conference USA? Kept getting poached every 3 seconds. How many of those Conference USA schools ended up in the AAC? Why do you think that the Conference USA looks the way it looks now? Because they kept getting poached. You only get poached when you have members that are in positions that are worth poaching. Makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. So, like I said, We will see where NIU is once the dust settles. They just need to be out of the MAC because no money's coming there anytime soon.